Sharon. Welcome to my YouTube channel. You can actually spend legitimate time practicing actually away from your instrument. Of course, you can't hope to ever play a piece of music without sitting down regularly and doing traditional music practice at your instrument. However, you can also legitimise practice time away from your instrument by achieving other techniques where you can get a wider view. You can step back, get a wider view, a different angle of approach. You can get a deeper view into certain things and just try a different viewpoint to get a handle on the music that you're trying to play. So one of the things that is often done by many professional pianists is that they actually just sit and read through their music. They won't actually play a piece of music until they fully become familiar with the music, just reading it as if it was a book, sit with a brew in hand and just read it through, follow the melodic line, just have a little look at the fingering, look at some inner voices, or just spend some time reading it through and becoming familiar with the layout of the music, watching the repeat markings and so on. So that is one way that you can just sort of sit and get accustomed to the music before you start to play it. Some people, once they've had a little go at the music and they're sort of becoming a bit more familiar, they then step away and then they actually draw a picture of what the music brings to mind when they play it. Now that sounds really silly, but it's not as silly as it first seems, because if you think about program music is where we are depicting a story, portraying an image. Liszt was the first composer to coin that phrase, and he also came up with the term symphonic poem, I think, as well. However, it wasn't a new concept. In fact, way back in the 16th century, the Renaissance madrigals were littered with word painting, which is kind of painting a picture in miniature over certain words. In fact, the music was so riddled with word painting that actually it became quite criticised as being very childish in their compositional style. And so, for example, I have here the text for a madrigal by the composer Thomas Weelkes, As Vesta Was Descending. It's funny, the madrigals seem to be always obsessed with nymphs and shepherds and pastoral scenes. So here we are. So, as Vesta was from Latmus Hill descending. So on the word descending, the melodic line is in the descending scale. No surprises there. Carrying on, she spied a maiden queen, the same ascending. And so now the melodic line is the ascending scale. Attended on by all the shepherd swain, there we go, shepherds, to whom Diana's darlings came running down amain. So there's a rapid downwards imitation of the melody there. The song continues. First 2 by 2, that's sung by 2 voices. Then 3 by 3 together, sung by 3 voices. Leaving their goddess all alone, hastened thither. That all alone is sung by solo voice. And mingling with the shepherds of her train, with mirthful tunes her presence entertain. Then sang the shepherds and nymphs of Diana, long live fair Oriana. And that long live is the longest phrase of the piece. I'll put a link in the cards and in the description to this piece, and you can see exactly what I mean about painting the words. 100 years or so later, we get a similar thing with Handel's Messiah in the tenor aria. There are lots of examples, but when the tenor sings every valley, when he sings the word low, it ends on a low note in the phrase. When he's singing the text mountain, it forms a peak in the pitch. When he sings the word crooked, the crooked ways, they have 4 different notes in rapid alteration. And when he sings the word straight, the crooked ways made straight, it's a long single note. So you get the gist. So painting pictures in music isn't really such a strange thing after all. And then program music became really popular in the Romantic period, where they were all obsessed with emotions and drama and so on. Bear in mind, this is kind of the time of artists painting pictures like the Scream or you know, we're in the Freudian era soon around that time as well. And so Beethoven paved the way into that era with his Pastoral Symphony, which is very programmatic, painting up images of pastoral scenes, and particularly the fourth movement of the storm scene. That's a good portrayal of imagery and music. And then we have Grieg's Peer Gynt suite in the Hall of the Mountain King, and I love Arthur Rackham's illustration of the story, the original story. Arthur Rackham's one of my most favourite artists, and you know, when you hear that music, you've no worries at all in trying to drum up images of trolls and mountain kings. And then of course there's the famous The Sorcerer's Apprentice by Dukas, and you know, that the story came first, again the music came after. However, I struggle to hear that piece of music now without thinking about Mickey Mouse. So have a listen to those and you'll see that art and music, conjuring images, painting a picture isn't such a far cry after all. And sometimes what happens as well is some people like to, rather than getting artistic about it, being a bit more analytical about it, they like to diagram out the music. And I have here a few examples of how people have diagrammed their music in their mind. And what might seem some random scribbles to somebody else could make perfect sense to you. I know, actually, before I get onto that, as a child I used to listen to music and sit there with great sheets of paper making lines, moving up and down, and big lines and heavy lines and light lines and thick coloured in lines, all moving up and down with pitch. And it's a shame we didn't know it was a thing back then, because perhaps if I'd have capitalised on that, I could have really got into massive analysis. I don't think I was even having lessons at that point. There's a really famous animation, I think it's really famous anyway, it seems to be everywhere on the internet, of this line rider animation. I'll put a link in the cards in the description again to the original YouTube link for that, of somebody who's done this fabulous animation to the Hall of the Mountain King. That takes it to a whole new level. However, here are some sort of analytical diagrams, I'll pop them on screen for you, where you can look at either blocks of rhythm or texture, or you can just sort of diagram out the dynamics. You could even photocopy the music and just sort of, as long as you own the original of course, and just sort of diagram over the top, scribble over the top, random scribbles, just seeming to sort of let the music float off as you see fit in scribbles. Or you could do sort of vague shapes where you see a theme returning from the original score. You know, these might not make sense to you particularly because this is not your way of diagramming out. Of course, you may not even feel like reaching out for the pencils and the pencil crayons. The most obvious thing to do is to just listen to the music that you are learning to play. And so if you're doing the dishes or driving the car or painting the fence, those mundane tasks leave your mind free, and you can put that time to good use. You can make best use of your time by actually listening to the music that you're trying to play. If you've got a bit of spare time, then by all means sit and follow the score at the same time as listening to the music. The one thing I would say in this respect is don't just listen to one performance, don't just listen to one performer. Do listen to various recordings, because the one thing you don't want is to create a carbon copy of this one other performance. Get other performers' take on things and sort of absorb that into your own interpretation of whatever it is you're playing. If you're playing an arrangement, it's good to go back and listen to the original. For example, I know that there was a grade 1 piano piece from Rigoletto, La Donna Immobile, where you're playing the really famous tune, and sometimes you'll be playing the soloist's, the singer's part, and then other times the piano part takes on the, I think it's the flute part in the orchestra doing little octave echoes and so on. And so you need to know what it is you're trying to represent on your instrument. I know that there's a flute piece in the grade 3 now, I think it is, of the piano Mozart alla Turca arranged for flute. And so you could do with listening to the piano version, because there are some parts, like later on in the piece, where the piano is actually playing massive, big, strong double octaves, which obviously you can't do on the flute, but you need to know in the tone that you're playing that these need more reinforced tone than perhaps the beginning. And I know that I think an old grade 3 piano piece used to be the Romance from Eine kleine Nachtmusik. So that's arranged for piano, but it was actually written as a serenade for strings. And so if you listen to the string original performance, then you can hear where the bowing marks, the nuances of the phrasing should be, and so you can then try and just bring that into your touch and tone as you're playing that piece. And so there are lots of different ways of just stepping aside from that microscopic tunnel vision approach of just hammering out notes, and just step back and get a wider picture. Anything you can do to just get it under your skin, and also make more use of your time. If you're just washing the dishes, surely it would be helpful to just get a little bit of extra sort of practice in. It's just a way of getting the music under your skin, and that way when you come back to your instrument, you're already familiar with the music, and you're not just abstractly, doggedly plugging away at a load of random notes. The notes have got meaning to you before you even start to play. You're already familiar with the piece, really, and so surely it's best to make the most use of your time, maximise the use of your time, and then when you come to the piano or whatever instrument it is that you're playing, you're already ahead of the game. So you can cheat whilst you're sitting having a brew. You can actually be doing your practice. I hope that helps. See you next time. Bye.